Become adventurer. Next day, early morning. The sun had just started to brighten, but Riesel was already awake. Taking a quick look around the somewhat unfamiliar room, he was confused for a moment before aware of his situation. Almost forgot, I've moved into Twilight Manor. This was one of the many towers within Twilight Manor, located on the upper floor in one of its rooms. Yesterday, after completing the status update at Loki's room, Riesel was assigned to this room. This was his room in Twilight Manor, the residence in Loki Familia's main base. From now on, barring any unexpected events, this place would be his, free for him to use. Getting out of bed, he first glanced outside the dimly lit window before starting to freshen up. After finishing his morning routine, he noticed a set of clothes placed outside his room, seemingly left there by some members of the Familia. Goddess told me to prepare these for you. Staring at the clothes with a note on top, Riesel fell silent for a moment, then silently thanked them in his mind before changing into the new clothes. As for his own clothes, there was no way he would wear them again. The set, covered in bloodstains, mud, and dust after a day and night of battle, had gloriously declared its demise. It couldn't be repaired, only discarded. In the awkward situation of having no replacement, he had to accept the kindness of the Familia. However, it seemed the Familia's goodwill wasn't limited to just a set of clothes. There was also a heavy bag filled with shining coins. Inside the bag, there was another note. There's a total of 100,000 VALRRR in here, consider it your startup funds. Use it wisely. If you don't follow my instructions from last night, you're not allowed to enter the dungeon. No need to guess, this note was almost certainly left by Loki. This reminded Riesel of the tasks assigned by her after updating his status last night. A wry smile suddenly appeared on his face. It seems that without completing those preparations, she won't allow me back into the dungeon. Well, that's fine. Since it was for his own benefit, Riesel would obediently follow Loki's arrangements. Taking the somewhat heavy money bag, he pondered for a moment. In the end, he chose not to carry it on his person but instead placed it in the storage space of the Dimensional Magic Cube. In the third instruction of the Dimensional Magic Cube's instructions it was mentioned that the Dimensional Magic Cube came with a storage space that could be opened and used at any time. Even before arriving in this world, while lying in bed recovering from injuries in his original world, he had already tried opening the storage space of the Dimensional Magic Cube. Therefore, he was not unfamiliar with this function. Collect. With a silent recitation in his heart, the money pouch in his hand disappeared. It had entered the storage space contained within the Dimensional Magic Cube. The method for the storage space to receive an item was straightforward: touch the belongings, silently say, collect. The process was the same for extracting an item. First, immerse consciousness into the Dimensional Magic Cube's storage space, observe the interior, locate the desired item, and then silently say, extract. Once familiar with these functions during the month of recuperation, he could now perform, collect, or extract, in less than a second. It was convenient and efficient. After he was done, Riesel opened the door and stepped into a corridor. Upon closer inspection, this corridor was suspended. As the base of Loki Familia, the various towers that made up Twilight Manor were interconnected. The lower halves of several spires were linked, while the upper halves extended into stone corridors connecting the towers. From the outside, it looked like a complex network of passages between the towers, lacking any semblance of order. Riesel walked on one such aerial corridor, which offered a view of the courtyard below. Morning. Morning, rookie. Several early rising Familia members seemed busy with tasks. They greeted Riesel as they passed by. Morning. Riesel returned the greetings politely and continued down the corridor, eventually leaving Twilight Manor. He crossed the courtyard and arrived at the main gate. Morning, rookie. Heading out so early? Don't come back like last night, all worn out, okay. The two Familia members at the gate recognized Riesel. One greeted him while the other gave a friendly warning. I won't, please be relieved, seniors. Feeling a bit awkward, Riesel could only smile politely before continuing on his way. It wasn't until he walked onto the main street that he felt the gazes behind him fade. They are quite friendly. And genuinely caring too. Riesel sighed slightly, feeling inexplicably moved. In his previous life, the people around him were mostly manipulative and hypocritical, smiling at him with hidden agendas. It was rare for anyone to genuinely care and show consideration as the members of the Loki Familia did. So, he found it quite foreign. Even the incident last night, where Loki gave him a cold shoulder for being out one day and one night, was something he wasn't used to. Therefore, he was quieter than usual. However, he knew it was because these people genuinely cared about him, making him feel awkward. It was a rare experience for him, so feeling awkward was natural. Fortunately, after spending a month healing in the main world, Yuri's attitude towards him wasn't bad either. Otherwise, he might truly have felt overwhelmed and unsure. Overall, the atmosphere within Loki Familia made Riesel quite comfy. Even though I already had some understanding of Loki Familia through the original work, when I originally chose to join Loki Familia, it wasn't without considering the friendly atmosphere within the Familia. But after experiencing it firsthand, it just felt different. Riesel could only express his feelings in this way before shaking his head, trying to clear his thoughts. However, his mood inevitably improved quite a bit, causing his steps to be more forceful than usual. Deep down, he silently noted everyone's help and concern and made a promise to repay them when the opportunity arose. That's just how he is, impressed and highly appreciative of people's kindness and goodwill. Perhaps it's because he rarely encountered people with purely good intentions towards him in the past. As he thought about his previous life, Riesel couldn't help but mock himself slightly. Whatever, let's not dwell on it too much. Since he had already decided to leave his past behind, thinking about those things would only add unnecessary worries. He quickly shifted his thoughts and began focusing on the tasks at hand. There's a lot to do today. Last night, Loki gave him several strict orders that he must complete. First, I need to prepare a new weapon and a set of armor suitable for dungeon exploration. Second, finish reading the books I found in the library last night, memorizing information about the dungeon's upper levels, maps, and details about the monsters on each floor. Lastly, visit the guild and register as an adventurer. These were the 3 instructions Loki gave Riesel to complete. Only after finishing these tasks could he enter the dungeon again. It's more accurate to say that, typically, people who want to enter the dungeon would complete these preparations first before considering venturing in. Riesel, on the other hand, disrupted common sense, entering the dungeon first and then turning back to make these preparations, truly leaving people dumbfounded. If it weren't for him awakening 1 magic and 3 skills with astonishing effects, and the update of his status last night almost driving Loki insane, she might have ordered him to find a party and not allow him to venture into the dungeon alone. At that moment, Loki was being quite lenient, only instructing him to make these 3 preparations. As for the books, I pretty much finished reading them last night. At least, I've memorized the information about the first few floors of the dungeon. Riesel, with his exceptional memory, wasn't troubled by that at all and had already completed the task last night. With 2 tasks left, register at the guild and use the startup funds to purchase weapons and armor. Let's go register at the guild first. Having made this decision, Riesel recalled the city map he noted down last night and headed northwest. The street here was bustling early in the morning, with many shops open and stalls set up on both sides. On the way, many people, humans, and various demi-humans were walking around, some well-equipped, indicating that they weren't to be messed with. Entering this street and walking deeper, Riesel, along with many others with the same destination, eventually arrived at a magnificent building. It was a building constructed with white pillars. In the spacious marble-made entrance hall, numerous heavily armed individuals were bustling around, crowding the area to the point of chaos. This was the guild, the official organization managing the Labyrinth City, or Ario. Most of the figures present were adventurers, people with the duty and purpose of conquering dungeons. Riesel managed to slip in and approach the counter. Hey there, could you help me register as an adventurer? Riesel spoke to the lady receptionist behind the counter. Sure, just a moment. The receptionist responded promptly. She skillfully pulled out a piece of parchment and began the registration process. Name: Riesel Brinhard. Race: human. Age: 17. Riesel initially thought about stating his age from his previous life, but it felt a bit awkward to report that age with the appearance of his current body. Therefore, he hesitated slightly before giving the age of his current body. To which familia do you belong? Unaware of his complex mood, the receptionist continued with the questions. Loki Familia. Riesel didn't hesitate much and stated it directly. However, in that split second, a brief silence fell over the entire hall. Support and read advanced chapters at Patreon. Com VALRRR. VALRRR creators' thoughts. 5 comments 0 vote. Getting stronger. What happened? Is something wrong? The sudden brief silence seemed to not affect Riesel as he calmly asked the lady receptionist who stared blankly at him. No, nothing wrong. The receptionist realized what she had done, hastily apologized, and continued filling out the registration form for him. However, whether it was his misconception or not, the receptionist's hands seemed faster than before, accelerating the registration process. The surrounding silence was once again filled with noise as if nothing had happened. Yet, if one listened closely, there were still many people discussing one after another. Is he really from Loki Familia? Just registered as an adventurer. A rookie, right? Loki Familia added another rookie. It's probably not a simple guy. Human, huh? Seems to lack good racial skills compared to other races. Could he be someone with outstanding personal skills? Who knows? The discussions continued endlessly, and some of it reached Riesel's ears. However, he paid them no heed. After all, it wasn't something particularly strange. As one of the strongest familias in Orario, Loki Familia was destined to be a focus of attention wherever they went. Since he had declared his affiliation with Loki Familia, it was normal for people around to discuss it. Moreover, he felt that his presence might soon catch the eye of observant and conscientious individuals through various channels. The addition of a rookie to Loki Familia might not be a big deal, but for those closely monitoring Loki Familia's movements, it was worth gathering information. Of course, they could only gather the information that Loki Familia had a new rookie named Riesel Brinhardt, and nothing more. As for specific information about him, it wasn't so easy for those people to find out. Not long after completing the procedures, Riesel left the guild and returned to the street. Instead of leaving directly, he wandered around on the street. This street, located in the northwest direction of Orario, known as Northwest Street, was mainly frequented by adventurers due to its proximity to the guild headquarters that manage the city and adventurers. Thanks to this, Northwest Street seized the opportunity and opened numerous shops catering to adventurers. There were shops specializing in weapons and armor equipment, shops selling potions and special items, and many more. Such establishments were abundant on Northwest Street, to the point where the street had earned the nickname, Adventurers Street. Following Loki's instructions, Riesel needed to purchase weapons and armor, so there was no reason for him to leave directly. 100,000 Valis. As Riesel strolled down the street, he weighed the amount of startup capital he had. In Orario, 100,000 Valis might not be chump change, but it's not exactly a fortune either. Here, a serving of fried noodles costs a few hundred Valis, and a regular drink rarely exceeds 1,000 Valis in value. Determining whether this purchasing power was significant or trivial was a bit of a delicate matter. A bottle of ordinary potion for stamina recovery is worth around 1,000 Valis. A basic, cheap standard short sword is valued at a few thousand Valis. When you calculate it like that, 100,000 Valis does seem like a decent sum. However, Riesel knew that for truly powerful adventurers, 100,000 Valis might be no more than pocket change. Without delving into specifics, the equipment wielded by top-tier adventurers typically didn't fall below 1,000,000 Valis, often surpassing 10 million Valis. For instance, weapons ranged from a few thousand Valis for standard ones to tens of millions or even over 100 million Valis for top-notch ones. Due to the ability of mortals to receive blessings and level up, there was a chance to obtain blacksmith development abilities. Depending on the blacksmith's skill and the level of the blacksmith ability, the crafted equipment varied in strength. Generally, people classify special equipment into first-class equipment, second-class equipment, and third-class equipment based on these levels. Only top-tier blacksmiths with the blacksmith ability could craft equipment that fell into these graded categories, especially the magical ones with special effects. In other words, even though Riesel had a startup capital of 100,000 Valis, he might not have been able to afford a single piece of the lowest-level third-class equipment, let alone gather weapons and armor. It seems like I won't be able to afford special equipment for now. Riesel felt a bit disappointed. Of course, it was only a slight disappointment. It wasn't strange for a level 1 rookie to be incapable of affording special equipment. Even level 2 adventurers would generally find it challenging to afford special equipment. The use of special equipment was concentrated, around 90%, among adventurers at level 3 and above. Riesel thought he would have to wait a while before he could use special equipment with levels and effective effects. I'll just buy some higher quality ordinary products then. Having accepted this reality, Riesel began browsing through the storefronts along the street. 2 hours later, he successfully gathered the equipment he needed. Firstly, he spent 24,000 Valis on a sword. The sword was the kind that could be used with one hand, slender and lightweight, with relatively weak attack power but fast in speed, agility, and easy handling. It was the weapon Riesel found most suitable for himself after considering various options. From the growth trends in his status, it was evident that his Dex and AGI had developed more, while STR and End were relatively less. This indicated that he leaned towards a faster, more skill-oriented fighting style. Therefore, he chose a lightweight and slender sword as his main weapon, aiming to maximize his proficiency in speed and skill. Besides the slender sword, he spent 11,000 Valis on a short sword as a backup weapon, just in case. As for armor, since heavy armor would hinder his movements and affect his speed and skill, he ultimately decided against high defense metal armor. Instead, he opted for leather body armor. This leather armor consisted of an inner layer protecting the upper body, armor for vital joints such as elbows and knees, while gloves and boots emphasized protection for hands and feet. Whether it was the body protecting inner layer or the joint protecting armor, both were lightweight and could be worn under clothes, making them convenient protective gear. Since they added almost no weight when worn on the body and didn't hinder movement, Riesel was immediately drawn to them and decided to put on this set of armor, especially the gloves and boots, which he knew from his earlier battle in the dungeon were highly practical. It was all because he didn't bother with proper protection for his hands and feet yesterday. After a day of intense fighting, the hands that gripped the sword were literally worn down to the skin, and the fists pounding on the monster's body had some unknown injuries, bleeding who knows how much. The same went for his feet. Running around in a dungeon with regular shoes meant his feet ended up with skin scraped off in just a fraction of a minute. If it weren't for the Familia's senior providing him with a potion to quickly heal his injuries when he returned to the Familia yesterday, Riesel wouldn't be bouncing around like this today. Adding the injuries from the intense battle that lasted one day and one night, it can only be said that, thankfully, the remarkably effective potion saved him. Otherwise, Loki, who saw his sorry state yesterday, wouldn't have let him off easily. The whole set of armor alone cost Riesel a whopping 48,000 Valis. With the expenses for the main and sub-weapons, he spent a total of 83,000 Valis, leaving him with only 17,000 Valis from the initial 100,000 Valis. This level of spending, this kind of pricey equipment, said with no trace of politeness, was definitely beyond the reach of a newly debuted level 1. Even the seasoned low-class adventurers among level 1, with all their equipment combined, probably wouldn't surpass 30,000 Valis. They pale in comparison to the quality of his equipment. His equipment was already at the level of level 2 adventurers. Is this good enough? After preparing the equipment, Riesel finally couldn't hold back and headed to Babel, entering the dungeon. He couldn't wait. Eager to test his new weapons and assess his current strength. And the results were naturally pleasing. Grr. When the kobold, like an unyielding ferocious beast, lunged at Riesel as usual, he boldly charged forward incredibly fast. Poo Kai. A silver arc tore through the atmosphere, cutting through the kobold's head as it pounced. The kobold even maintained its pouncing posture in midair, unable to react at all, and its head was severed by the slender sword. Blood sprayed, dyeing the ground red and the corpse of the kobold in the bloody pool. So easy. Standing in front of the corpse, Riesel looked at his hands in amazement. My speed has become so fast, and I feel much stronger than yesterday. Just by enhancing basic abilities by 1 and 2 ranks, can there be such a significant change? This surprised and excited him. I am indeed getting stronger. After realizing this, he no longer felt just excitement but also a surge of determination for the efforts he had made so far. It's just a bit unfortunate that after getting stronger, enemies at this level probably won't excite me anymore. Riesel greedily eyed the corpse at his feet, his expression turning regretful. He still preferred challenges that were a bit more thrilling. Support and read advanced chapters at Patreon.com VALRRR. VALRRR creators' thoughts. 5 comments 0 vote. Almighty. The improvement in strength seemed to make it impossible for Riesel to engage in tense and thrilling battles with monsters as he did yesterday, leaving him without the excitement he felt before. He moved forward, even descending through several floors, engaging in battles with monsters. Whether it was kobolds or goblins, renowned among the small fry, no matter how many gathered or what kind of attack they launched, he effortlessly dealt with them. Not a single monster could react to his movements. Not a single monster could withstand his strikes. All Riesel needed to do was charge, swing his sword, and he could instantly kill any monster, easily breaking through their encirclement and wiping them out. This gradually left him feeling dissatisfied. Just because my basic abilities have grown by 1 and 2 ranks, the monsters on the upper floors are completely insufficient to challenge me. Ignoring the monsters fallen all around, Riesel frowned deeply. At this point, he had descended to the 4th floor and reached the entrance to the 5th floor. It seems like I need to continue pushing forward. Staring at the entrance to the 5th floor, which resembled a cave opening, his eyes flickered. According to the records in the book and the experiences of the guild and familias, adventurers at my level are generally considered capable of exploring floors 5 to 7, right? Level 1 adventurers could conquer floors between the 1st and 12th. From the 13th floor, level 2 monsters appear, and the dungeon environment and monster output efficiency undergo a significant change. Floors starting from the 13th were considered forbidden zones for level 1 adventurers. The difficulty of conquering floors between the 1st and 12th was outlined by guilds and familias. For example, the 1st to 4th floors were areas that adventurers with basic abilities between I and H could conquer. The 5th to 7th floors were for adventurers with basic abilities between G and F, and so on. My Dex and AGI are both at G rank. According to the standards, the 5th floor should be relatively safe for exploration. Unlike last night, when he reached the 5th floor and faced numerous life-threatening situations, Riesel should be able to safely conquer the floor now. But a safe conquest? Riesel murmured, then made a decision. Let's go to deeper floors. Exactly. He didn't need a safe conquest. If safety was the priority, he wouldn't have ventured into the dungeon alone without wearing any armor, wielding a mere decorative short sword, and challenging the dungeon right after receiving a blessing. At that time, he didn't even reach G rank. He didn't have any abilities at H rank. His status proficiency was 0, and his physical qualities were no different from an ordinary person. In such circumstances, he dared to enter the dungeon alone, even reaching the 5th floor. Now that he had grown, why would he settle for the so-called safe conquest on the same floor? Of course, such a decision was bound to be dangerous. But so what? Death isn't terrifying. What's terrifying is waiting for it. At least, that was how Riesel saw it. If he was destined to die, he'd rather it be on a path he chose, chasing freedom until he was worn out, rather than waiting for someone else to plot his murder, like in the main world. So, he was running. Running towards higher ground. Sprinting towards bigger challenges. Let's go. Without hesitation, Riesel charged towards the entrance of the 5th floor. It was night. When the day had completely darkened, Riesel finally escaped the dungeon and returned to Twilight Manor. This time, he managed to restrain himself and didn't spend another day and night inside the dungeon. After dark, he had to go back to Orario and return to the manor, which was a strict order from Loki to him. Given this, although somewhat reluctant, Riesel still followed her command and left the dungeon after dark. Back at Twilight Manor, he cleaned himself up, changed into a set of clean clothes, and once again entered Loki's divine room. The purpose, of course, was to update his status. Perhaps because Riesel had been obedient, Loki, who was drinking in the room at that time, filled with the scent of alcohol, seemed quite pleased and readily agreed. Riesel Brynhard. Level 1. STR, H184 right pointing arrow F385. End, H177 right pointing arrow F380. Dex, G202 right pointing arrow E431. AGI, G215 right pointing arrow E449. Mag, I0. Looking at the ridiculous growth status etched on Riesel's back after the updates, Loki's mouth twitched repeatedly. An overall ability proficiency increase of over 800. Isn't this even more significant than yesterday's growth? Loki felt her head buzzing. What on earth was happening? What in the world was going on? The growth in status, especially as it approached S rank, shouldn't slow down. But this kid not only didn't slow down, he became even faster. Last time, after battling in the dungeon for a full day and night, the total ability proficiency increased by just over 700. This time, in just a daytime, with time spent on adventurer registration and purchasing equipment, the growth speed not only didn't slow down but instead became faster. It made no sense at all. Loki wanted to ask Riesel what he did after entering the dungeon, but upon careful consideration, she gave up. Her divine intuition told her that if she pursued this matter, she would likely be angry. This kid surely did something dangerous again. And indeed, he did. If Loki knew that Riesel not only reached the 5th floor today but also descended to the 7th floor, she would absolutely be furious. To ensure a good night's sleep tonight, Loki sensibly chose to change the topic. At this rate of growth, it won't be long before you can compete with some seasoned veterans who have struggled for several years at level 1. Loki's tone was somewhat lamenting. Completing the journey that takes the average adventurer years in just 2 days. It was truly unbelievable. Perhaps he'll break the record for the fastest ascent to level 2 and become the new record holder. Loki's evaluation was extremely high. I hope so. Riesel put on his clothes while looking at the translated status, lost in thought. Why do you look so concerned? Loki, seemingly carefree, spoke bluntly. Don't tell me you're dissatisfied with your growth speed. If you dare to humblebrag like that, I might just have to throw a punch at you. You, a goddess, actually use the term, humblebrag. I'm surprised. Riesel, somewhat helpless. I was thinking about mag. Loki understood Riesel's meaning. Are you concerned that your mag hasn't grown at all? Loki voiced Riesel's thoughts. Yeah. Riesel nodded. The basic abilities are improving, but mag remains the same. It feels very wasteful. I understand. Loki nodded repeatedly and wholeheartedly agreed with his train of thought. With your inhuman growth speed, if you can't take advantage to boost mag, it does indeed feel like a waste of an innate skill. Mag was different from the other basic abilities. While abilities like STR, and Dex, and AGI determined physical qualities and close combat abilities, mag belonged to a different system. It determined the strength and effects of magic. For mages who relied on magic for victory and were not skilled in close combat, the importance of mag outweighed the other 4 basic abilities. Even if one didn't train the other 4 basic abilities, focusing solely on the mag could still yield powerful combat strength, possibly even surpassing that of close combat specialists. Magic, being a symbol of supernatural power, equivalent to a miracle, inherently possessed extraordinary power. In terms of status and power, it outclassed close combat. Therefore, anyone with the opportunity would want to develop mag, including Riesel. In the main world, I couldn't use magic anymore. Now, with new possibilities, having a chance to use magic again, if I don't make an effort, then it's my fault. Riesel silently contemplated in his mind. The issue lay in. Kiddo, your magic doesn't seem like something you can use casually, yeah? Loki raised this question. Yes. Riesel sighed, recalling his own magic. Magic. Almighty. Memorize magic. Activate specific magic based on memory. The strength of the magic is determined by the basic ability of mag. Only effective for valid magic. This was the only magic that Riesel possessed, and it was an extremely versatile and potent magic with a high potential. Judging by the magic you've got, you should be able to activate any magic you've memorized. It's like being able to use all kinds of magic at once. As Loki brought up this topic, Riesel's expression started resembling that of a monster, at least in her eyes. This magic, isn't this too outrageous? Loki couldn't help but complain inwardly. Support and read advanced chapters at patreon.com VALRRR. VALRRR creators' thoughts. 5 comments 0 vote. Pissed. Download the app for additional rewards. More events, more perks. Winning you more free perks. Download now. VALRRR. Download app now. The return of the expedition party. Throughout history, anyone who received blessings, no matter who they were, could have at least 1 and at most 3 magic slots. This was common knowledge. Even among the so-called magic race like the elves, after receiving blessings, they too only had 3 magic slots for awakening magic, and a 4th one would never appear. Of course, having only 3 magic slots for awakening didn't mean that one could only use 3 types of magic. Some people, due to the uniqueness of their awakened magic, could undergo multiple transformations or have effects with multiple variations. As a result, the number of usable magic exceeded the 3 slots. Take Loki Familia for example. There were 2 members with such abilities. A high elf who could transform her magic multiple times, depending on the amount of chant used. This allowed her to use one magic as if it were 3, ultimately enabling them to cast 9 different variations, equivalent to possessing 9 different magic. Another member was also an elf, who awakened magic limited to the magic of the elf race. With this magic, she could cast magic used by her own race. In theory, she could cast all elven magic with just this one magic, surpassing the magic slots of any mage. Riesel, on the other hand, had awakened to only one magic. However, despite having only one magic, its effects, possibilities, and scope were greater than those mentioned earlier. Could this magic allow him to cast any magic stored in his memory? Did this mean that, with a sufficient number of remembered magic, he could use as many as he wanted? Despite its incredible nature, this magic had its limitations. From what I can see right now, there are 2 confirmed usage requirements for your magic. Loki said while holding up 2 fingers. First, you can only cast magic that you have memorized. If you can't remember the magic, you can't use it. Second, even if you have memorized the magic, if you haven't personally confirmed its effects, you still can't use it. In other words, if Riesel wanted to use someone else's magic, that person had to cast it in front of him. Moreover, he himself had to remember all the details of the casting process, conditions, effects, and power. Nothing could be missing. Those were the limitations of Almighty. Because of this, Riesel was currently unable to use any magic, as he had not witnessed any magic being cast before his eyes since coming to this world. Even if he had seen a priest healing him with magic in his main world, he couldn't use it now because the priest had used a magic chant with mysterious runes that he had never encountered before. The chanting process wasn't clear, and as a result, he couldn't remember the detailed process and conditions needed to cast that magic using Almighty. Therefore, Riesel was currently in a state where he couldn't use a single magic. Loki was aware of this fact as she rubbed her chin thoughtfully. This problem isn't that difficult to solve. Loki said thoughtfully. We have plenty of members in Familia, and there are many who can use magic. Just have those kids perform magic in front of you sincerely, even teach you how to use their magic. With your memory, you should be able to pick up several types of magic quickly. No. The seemingly carefree goddess had already noticed Riesel's exceptional memory as an innate skill, surprising him a bit. However, her proposition was quite helpful for him. Looking at the usage requirements of Almighty, there was nothing more convenient than having others personally teach him how to use their magic to trigger its effects. Let's do this then. Loki thought for a moment and gazed at Riesel. After everyone returns from the expedition, I'll find someone skilled to teach you how to use magic. How about that? Expedition. Riesel raised his brows slightly. That's right. Loki chuckled. Most of my kids are currently not at home but in the dungeon. The dungeon, as the world's largest mystery, still had many areas unexplored. This underground labyrinth with countless floors grew larger the deeper one went, and the distance from the surface increased. This situation naturally prevented some adventurers fighting at the forefront of the dungeon from easily traveling between Orario and the dungeon. It was said that going from the first floor to the 50th floor would take several days just for travel alone, and the round trip could easily exceed a week. Thus, the concept of an expedition emerged. The so-called expedition, as the name suggested, was an adventurer party of a large familia, acting like an army, venturing deep into the dungeon for battle. They went to floors ordinary adventurers couldn't easily reach, fought powerful monsters, stepped into uncharted floors, explored the unknown, and developed unexplored areas. Loki Familia was one of the strongest familias in Orario, specializing in exploration. The familia's role was to conquer the dungeon, explore unknown territories, and gain profit or fame. In the 2 days since Riesel joined Loki Familia, the main members of the familia had just left for a dungeon expedition, leaving only a small number of lower-ranking members behind. In other words, when he joined Loki Familia, the true experts and geniuses of the familia were fighting terrifying monsters in the underground labyrinth, far from the surface, beyond what he could currently handle. Thinking up to this point, Riesel's heartbeat slightly accelerated, and his eyes lit up with expectation. Oi oi oi, what do you want to do? Loki noticed his behavior. You're just a level 1 rookie for fuck's sake. Doing well on the upper floors is already good enough for you. Don't give me ideas about expeditions. It's not something you can participate in right now. Really? Riesel looked at her with disappointment. Loki's mouth twitched. This kid is actually thinking about joining an expedition. After receiving a blessing for only 2 days, he dares to think about expeditions. There must be something wrong with this kid's head. Why are there so many problem children in my familia? Loki couldn't help but think like that with resignation. Anyone eligible for the expedition must be at least a level 2 with a special talent, like a healer who can use healing magic, for example. Loki said while covering her face and sighing in an earnest and well-meaning manner. Even if you can learn other people's magic and become a special talent, Finn won't allow you to join the expedition unless you reach level 2. So, you better quickly dismiss any dangerous thoughts in your mind. Upon hearing Loki, Riesel stared at her for a moment, confirming that she wouldn't budge on this point, before reluctantly withdrawing his gaze with a hint of regret. Fine. Riesel reluctantly conceded. Let's talk about it when I reach level 2. Loki couldn't help but roll her eyes at him and sighed once again. She couldn't shake the feeling that her future days might not be peaceful under the antics of this kid. Let's see, the expedition party should be back soon. Loki had to change the subject. Just wait for 2 more days. Understood. Riesel nodded. Loki then broke into a big smile, looking somewhat mischievous. When Finn and the others come back and find out that our familia has gained such a freakish monster, I wonder what expressions they'll have. Loki mused to herself. Especially Ice, also Bet, Tion, and Tiona. They should be stimulated by this kid's growth speed, right? Now that I think about it, it makes me excited. The goddess of mischief chuckled like a mischievous child getting ready to watch some TV drama. And the day she looked forward to arrived even sooner than she imagined. The next day. When the sky outside began to brighten, Riesel, just like yesterday, woke up early. He quickly freshened up, took care of his morning routine in 5 minutes, and then got ready by putting on his armor and clothes. He wanted to head to the dungeon directly without wasting any time. Today, he planned to explore the dungeon all day and see if he could go down a few more floors. His status had grown after yesterday's update, especially Dex and AGI, both upgraded to E rank. According to the Safe Strategy Guide, he could now safely explore the 8th floor. However, he naturally wasn't satisfied with the so-called safe strategy. So, his plan today was to go to the 10th floor, or even deeper into the dungeon. For this, he took the time to maintain his weapon with the items he bought before going to sleep last night, filled with enthusiasm, ready to make some noise. Thinking about entering a floor deeper than yesterday's 7th floor, he felt a slight excitement. I heard that starting from the 10th floor, much larger creatures like orcs will appear. I wonder how strong they are. Riesel's heart was full of anticipation. But just as he was about to set off with his primary and secondary weapons, suddenly, a voice echoed within Twilight Manor. They are back. Everyone is back. The expedition party has returned. The joyful shouts broke the morning silence, plunging the entire Twilight Manor into a commotion. Chaotic footsteps rang out and the sound of doors opening resounded in succession as if telling everyone that the entire occupant of Twilight Manor was rushing outside. Back. Riesel was also slightly surprised and immediately stood up. In his mind, images of figures mentioned in the original work floated one after another, causing him to squint his eyes. With his weapons, he walked out of his room towards the entrance of Twilight Manor. Support and read advanced chapters at Patreon. Com VALRRR. VALRRR creators' thoughts. 4 comments 0 vote. First class adventurers. Loki Familia's base, Twilight Manor's entrance. Today, there was a lively atmosphere in this particular place, unlike anything seen in the past 2 days. One after another, members of the Familia, who were originally stationed in the manor, showed excitement and enthusiasm not seen before. They cheered and leapt with joy, welcoming a group of people. As Riesel descended from the tall tower and reached the entrance, the group was surrounded by the stationed Familia members, exuding happy and relaxed smiles, creating a warm atmosphere. His vision almost instantly locked onto the leaders of this group. There, several individuals stood out prominently among their peers, catching his eye. Finally back. The energetic cheers came from a girl with wheat-colored skin, dressed in a dancer-like fashion. She wore a cloth covering only her upper body, with a long wraparound skirt around her waist, exposing her belly button and graceful figure without hesitation. Tiona, you're so noisy. The one scolding the lively girl with wheat-colored skin was another girl, almost identical to the lively girl in everything except for waist-length hair and some body proportions. They looked like they were cut from the same mold. Damn it, how many times have you shouted since coming in? Beside them, a young beast man with animal ears, tail, and facial tattoos, looking like a rebellious gangster, shook his head in disbelief while wearing an annoyed expression. The Amazonas twins and the werewolf youth, positioned conspicuously, engaged in a playful argument. However, the 3 individuals standing next to these 3 were even more imposing. They formed a trio of Palom, elf, and dwarf. Palom, shorter and smaller than anyone present, with a childlike appearance. An elf with emerald long hair and a white robe, holding a silver staff, with long pointed ears and extraordinary beauty. A robust dwarf, clad in thick armor, slightly taller than the Palom but shorter than the elf, visibly muscular. These 3 individuals, as if guarding something, smiled at everyone, radiating a benevolent feeling. Riesel's vision swept over these 3, but shortly afterward, it seemed as if something had irresistibly attracted his attention, and his gaze uncontrollably lingered on the last person's body. However, before he could thoroughly observe this person, a loud voice interrupted him, breaking into this warm gathering. I missed you so much. Loki, shouting like a child, rushed out, heading towards the leading group. No, more accurately, she was charging towards the figure who had captured Riesel's attention. Ice. Like an uncle seeing a beloved niece, Loki screamed strangely and pounced on the figure. The entire crowd witnessed this. They saw the scene where the gentle long golden hair suddenly moved. Boom. Accompanied by an explosive sound, the long golden-haired figure sidestepped, delivering a punch to Loki's stomach. Gah! Loki immediately made a muffled cry, expelling all the air from her lungs, and collapsed in front of the golden-haired figure. I'm back, Loki. A voice devoid of any excitement or hesitation emanated from the golden-haired figure's mouth. The clear and pleasant voice revealed that the long golden-haired figure was undoubtedly a young and beautiful girl. And indeed, that was the case. The girl standing in front of the fallen Loki still retained a hint of childishness in her appearance. She seemed quite young, her slender body adorned in a light azure outfit. Her skin was delicate and smooth, with remarkably well-defined features. Her beauty easily rivaled that of elfin goddess. She had a pair of eyes that matched her hair color, subtly radiating a transparent glow. A mysterious aura surrounded her entire being as if she had stepped out of a painting, appearing almost unrealistically beautiful. The only downside was the lack of expression on her exquisite face, resembling a doll and giving off a sense of detachment. Confronted with this excessively beautiful doll-like girl, Loki could only manage to lift her face with difficulty. Your skills have improved again, Ice. Loki forced a smile uglier than crying. Well, Loki, serves you right, I guess. Tiona, the lively Amazoness girl, approached with her face full of delight at Loki's misfortune. We're tired, Loki. Can you not bother us right now? Let us rest well, okay. Another Amazoness girl, who seemed more mature than the lively one, appeared while sighing. TCH. The werewolf youth also wore an impatient expression, showing no respect for the goddess. However, there was no uncomfortable atmosphere between the two sides. Instead, there was a natural sense of harmony, indicating a not just good but excellent relationship, one where they could interact without reservation or hesitation. Family. Riesel observed this scene before him, seeing the scene that seemed somewhat distant and foreign to him. At this moment, the trio that had been watching from the sidelines approached. We're back, Loki. The elf lady, or more precisely, the high elf lady, regal like a queen, spoke in a serious yet slightly warm tone towards Loki. Get up quickly, don't lie down. The dwarf uncle cheerfully pulled Loki up, looking as if he were effortlessly lifting a doll. Finally, the shortest person in the group, with hair like sheaves of wheat and lake-like azure eyes, approached with an appearance more youthful than anyone else present, the Palom. The expedition has ended smoothly with no casualties, but the gains aren't noteworthy. I'll explain the details later. For now, let everyone take a good bath and rest, Loki. With an unexpectedly mature tone, the Palom reported to Loki. No problem. Loki suddenly grinned like nothing happened, addressing the group. Well then, everyone, good job and rest well. Yes. The returning members responded one after another. Those who stayed, bring in the spoils we brought back. The Palom, in a matter-of-fact tone, instructed the people around. Yes, Captain. The remaining members immediately went to help with moving things. Only Riesel remained standing in place, watching the group entering Twilight Manor with laughter and conversation, his gaze fixed on the three top executives throughout. Not only Riesel, but the rest of the Familia members, whether those staying at the base or those on the expedition, looked at the three top executives with admiration and affection. It was only natural. After all, those three individuals were the pinnacle of Loki Familia, the backbone of this Familia. They were powerful. They were renowned worldwide. Among the adventurers engaged in labyrinth exploration, all adventurers were categorized into high-class adventurers and low-class adventurers based on their level. Low-class adventurers referred to adventurers at level 1, while high-class adventurers was the title given to adventurers who had experienced a level up, reaching level 2 and above. High-class adventurer was further divided into third-class adventurer, second-class adventurer, and first-class adventurer. Adventurers at level 2 were considered third-class adventurers. Adventurers at level 3 and level 4 were classified as second-class adventurers. Adventurers at level 5 and above were recognized as first-class adventurers. Generally, if a familia had a third-class adventurer, it was considered to have gained some status in Orario, stepping out of the realm of a small familia. Therefore, if a familia had a first-class adventurer, it held significant influence in Orario. A familia with multiple first-class adventurers could be considered one of the top familia in Orario and even worldwide. Loki Familia, precisely one of these top familia, stood as one of the most prominent. Tiona Hiryut, level 5, Amazoness, Loki Familia's executive, bearing the alias Crusher. Tion Hiryut, level 5, Amazoness, Loki Familia's executive, bearing the alias Jormungand. Bet Loga, Level 5, Werewolf, Loki Familia's executive, bearing the alias, Vanargand. These three were the Amazonas twin sisters and the werewolf youth who initiated the conversation earlier. They were the first-class adventurers within Loki Familia. The other trio had even more impressive backgrounds. Finn Diemny, Level 6, Palam's hero, Loki Familia's captain and top executive, bearing the alias, Braver. Rivriel Yozalf, Level 6, a high elf and elven royalty, Loki Familia's vice captain and top executive, Orario's strongest mage, bearing the alias, Ninehell. Gareth Landrock, Level 6, Dwarf's warrior, Loki Familia's top executive, bearing the alias, Elgarm. These three were the strongest members of Loki Familia, leading the Familia from its early days to its current glory, all Level 6, a rarity in all of Orario. As for the last person, Riesel once again turned his gaze toward the doll-like girl walking among the group, a bit silent and reserved. Ice Wallenstein, Level 5, Loki Familia's executive, the strongest swordswoman, bearing the alias, Sword Princess. His few whispered words faded away like the wind. The golden-haired girl about to enter the tall tower seemed to have heard something, turned her head, and looked in Riesel's direction. Their eyes met in an instant. At that moment, in their eyes, it seemed as if there was only each other. Support and read advanced chapters at Patreon.com VALRRR. VALRRR creators' thoughts. 7 comments 0 vote. Uncanny resemblance. Riesel's figure had a feature somewhat similar to Ice. That was the faint, transparent glow in their eyes. Even though his eyes were purely black, completely different from Ice's dazzling gold, others couldn't see any similarities. However, when they stared at each other, if a third person was observing them carefully, they would be surprised to discover an uncanny resemblance in their eyes. Both had a hint of transparent radiance. Both had a touch of indifference. Both also carried a determination imperceptible to outsiders. Riesel and Ice found themselves momentarily stunned when their eyes met for the first time. They discovered that the gaze of the other resembled their own, creating a strange sensation of seeing another version of themselves, like looking into a mirror and seeing their own eyes reflected. This peculiar feeling held them in a prolonged gaze, seemingly forgetting the people around them and neglecting to avert their eyes, lost in a wordless connection. Eventually, Riesel was the first to break free from this strange state. Under Ice's gaze, he nodded in acknowledgement, then turned around to join other members, assisting in transporting the spoils brought back by the expedition party. Ice watched Riesel silently, her transparent golden eyes flashing slightly. "Miss Ice." A voice suddenly brought her back to reality. It was an elf girl standing behind Ice, more like a follower than a companion. She tied her chestnut-colored long hair into a lengthy ponytail that hung down her back. With pointed ears peeking through a strand of hair on either side of her face, she looked younger than Ice but possessed a breathtakingly beautiful face. Lefia. Ice, realizing the elf's presence, subconsciously said her name. Yes. Lefia repeatedly nodded. Somewhat uncertain, she asked timidly. What were you looking at? Ice was about to answer but was interrupted by another girl who had pounced on her back. I saw it. With such a lively voice, precisely another executive of Loki Familia, a level 5 first-class adventurer, and Ice's peer, the Amazoness Tiona. Ice was just looking at a boy. Hee. Tiona teased first, then looked towards Riesel, puzzled. By the way, who's that boy? We haven't seen him before, right? Idiot. Tione, seemingly drawn into the conversation, crossed her arms, glanced at the busy Riesel with no interest, and spoke without any enthusiasm. Since he's someone we haven't seen before, he's either a newly joined rookie or not from our familia. BU but he's helping with the lifting. Lefia couldn't help but glance at Riesel a few times and murmur. Since he's helping an inside our base, he must be a rookie, right? Oh. So that's how it is. Tiona looked like she had just realized something. A rookie, and a male at that. UMU. Loki hasn't recruited a male into the familia for who knows how long. Don't you notice the revolting behavior Loki's got going on? She's all about those cute and pretty girls, isn't she? Tione rolled her eyes. But Ice, you're actually paying attention to a rookie, and what's more, he's a dude. That's pretty unusual. On the side, Lefia nodded vigorously, staring at Riesel's figure, and for some unknown reason, with a slightly vicious expression. Ice, unaware of this, remained silent amid the continuous verbal onslaught. Her gaze continued to follow Riesel's back, lost in thought. This scene made the Amazonas twin sisters exchange a knowing glance. It's really my first time seeing her like this. Tion expressed surprise, then added with a snicker. Could it be that our doll princess has finally reached puberty? If everyone knew, it would definitely be interesting, yeah. Tiona said innocently, then added with a mischievous grin. Especially Loki and Bet. Her words smoothly caught the attention of those who were curious. Oi, foolish Amazoness, what are you saying about me again? Bet glared at Tiona. Blee blee blee. Tiona stuck her tongue out at him. Not telling you, just figure it out yourself. HMPH. This moron. Bet looked visibly displeased. Just as the two were about to quarrel, Gareth, breaking away from the conversation between Finn and Loki, shouted at everyone. Don't play around there. Hurry up and go in for a bath and sleep. People are waiting in line behind to use the bathroom. The admonition finally quieted everyone down, and they quickly entered the manor, making use of the time to clean up and rest. Only Ice remained standing in place, causing Riveria to approach slowly. What happened, Ice? Riveria maintained her solemn tone, but her gaze toward Ice was gentler than toward anyone else, not like looking at a junior in the Familia but more like looking at her own daughter. Nothing. Ice chose not to voice her feelings, nor did she look again at the busy Riesel. After a slight acknowledgement, she turned and walked away. Riveria watched Ice's back with a hint of compassion in her eyes, shortly afterward shifting her gaze to Riesel's figure. A rookie. Riveria pondered. No one knew that everything happening here was being observed by Loki, who was paying careful attention. So, they discovered that kid's presence so quickly, EHH. Loki observed calmly, feeling oddly pleased. Loki. Finn, who was conversing with Loki, looked at the suddenly silent goddess and called her name. Sorry, got slightly absent-minded, Loki snapped back to reality, giving a casual laugh. You guys go handle your own things, rest a bit, and we'll talk about anything important tonight. Okay. Finn nodded. I'll go in first. We can deal with the spoils tomorrow. Go ahead. Loki waved her hand, dismissing her Familia captain. After the members of the expedition left, Loki grinned and shouted in Riesel's direction. Kiddo, come back early tonight, don't make too much trouble, okay? The shout from behind made Riesel pause for a moment. He knew Loki was fulfilling the promise from last night, introducing him to his mentor for magic. I know. Riesel could only suppress the somewhat restless thoughts in his mind and abandon the plan to delve deeper into the dungeon today. Time flies by quickly. As the day darkened once again, Orario welcomed back adventurers returning safely from the dungeon, along with the common folk finishing their day's work. It seemed like only at this time people would disregard their identities and racial differences, mingling together on the lively and relaxed streets. This atmosphere was undoubtedly the most intense in Twilight Manor today. Perhaps it was because everyone from the expedition party had returned, Loki Familia became much livelier than the past 2 days, and the atmosphere was quite vibrant. After great rest, numerous members who returned from the expedition finally shook off the fatigue of consecutive battles. They shed their equipment and immersed themselves in the relaxed and pleasant atmosphere of the Familia. Normally, at this time, the Familia would begin settling the gains from the expedition. Even Finn as the captain, considering the hardships of the expedition, empathized with the members and decided to handle the spoils tomorrow. Dealing with things other than spoils at this moment was still tolerable. For example, many Familia members were eager to update their status with Loki, to see how much they had grown this time and if they could accumulate valuable Excelia for a level up. Unfortunately, Loki seemed to have no mood to handle this today. Playing the role of a whimsical goddess, she postponed the tasks to update everyone's status. Let's talk about it in a couple of days. Loki left that sentence for the helpless Familia members, who had no choice but to comply. After the expedition, the main task for the Familia was handling the spoils. There were few other tasks to complete, allowing everyone to enjoy a rare period of leisure before the next expedition. Hence, many were not in a hurry. In this situation, all the executives of the Familia gathered in Loki's divine room. It seems like everyone has rested well. Loki looked at the state of mind of her children and nodded in satisfaction. However, Bet seemed a bit unhappy about this. What's up? Why'd you call us all here out of the blue? He seemed to be complaining that the goddess disrupted his plans. But his eyes kept drifting towards Ice, his tail wagging back and forth, proving his words were insincere. To call us all here suddenly is indeed rare. Tiona said while holding onto Ice's arm affectionately, which made Bet secretly annoyed. I thought you would only call Captain for a talk. Tion crossed her arms. I don't mind though, as long as Captain is there, I'll be there. Finn could only show a face full of helplessness as he heard Tion's statement. Rivria shook her head and sat beside Ice, waiting quietly for Loki to speak. Why did you call all the executives here? Garrett stroked his long beard, looking at Loki and making an inquiry. Throughout, Ice made no movements or sounds and stayed silent. Loki, with hands on her hips, proudly spoke. No worries. I just want to introduce a troublesome brat to everyone. Upon hearing that, everyone was momentarily stunned. Introduce someone? They were all even more confused. Who could make their goddess, who usually had no proper manner, treat affairs so seriously? What's more, she gathered all the executives just to introduce someone. Everyone present looked at each other, curiosity building up.